Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to go over the reward circuit. So this is a very well-known figure outlining the simple circuitry of the brain reward circuit. So the primary neurons involved in reward have been thought to be the dopamine neurons that reside in the ventral tegmental area, or the VTA right here. And these neurons provide dopaminergic input to many different areas of the brain, including the nucleus accumbens, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. And the primary neuron cell type in the nucleus accumbens that receive the dopamine signal are the GABAergic medium spiny neurons. In addition to the very simplistic view of dopamine release from the VTA to these brain regions, we now know that these brain regions are highly interconnected. So in addition to the dopamine from the VTA, the nucleus accumbens receives glutamatergic inputs from the prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and the hippocampus. And the prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and hippocampus receive reciprocal glutamatergic connections with each other. So these are highly interconnected brain regions. And on top of that, all of these regions, including the VTA, also receive serotonergic inputs from the midbrain raphe nuclei and noradrenergic inputs from the locus coeruleus. So there's a lot going on in the brain circuitry. Brain region involvement is very complex. And historically, brain regions have been assigned single functions. So for example, the VTA and its release of dopamine has originally thought to be a reward function, and the amygdala has originally been thought to mediate only fear, the hippocampus mediates memory, and the prefrontal cortex mediates working memory and executive control. However, with more research, we now know that brain regions have multiple functions. So the VTA and its dopamine neurons specifically are also involved in aversion. The amygdala is also involved in memory function, and the hippocampus is also involved in emotional control. In addition to the brain regions that were listed on this circuit diagram, we know that many more brain regions are involved in reward, including the ventral pallidum, the mesopontine tegmentum, the insular cortex, and a huge number of other brain regions. So reward is a very complex thing in the brain. Now, decades of work on dopamine has elucidated a better understanding of what its role is in reward. So it was originally thought to be a pleasure molecule released during natural rewards or chemical rewards such as drugs of abuse. However, it is clear now that dopamine's role is much more complex, and it's thought to be a salient signal. So what does this mean? A salient signal is a signal that something important is going on in the environment that the organism should pay attention to. And of course, events that produce reward, such as finding food, finding a mate, are important salient events. So dopamine would be released during these processes. But we also know that dopamine is now released during non-rewarding but salient events, such as alerting or aversive events for the organism. In addition, we have a better understanding or a more refined understanding of the underlying psychological processes that go on in reward. So for example, liking and wanting are two separate psychological processes that have separate but overlapping brain region involvement, so they're very interconnected. Liking can refer to the hedonic impact of pleasant rewards, whereas wanting can refer to incentive salience, which motivates the person or the animal to pursue them, and an easy conceptualization of incentive salience in substance use disorder is the phenomena of craving. Substance use disorder is also heavily influenced by gene by environment interactions. So there is a large component of genetic factors in substance use disorders, Studies over the years have shown a 30 to 70% heritability of substance use disorder depending on the different class of the substance misuse over many different studies. Now, individual genes are harder to identify due to the highly polygenic nature of the heritability. So this means that there are many, many genes involved, each contributing a small factor of influence in the heritability. Environment factors are also highly complex. So things such as the age of drug exposure, as well as stress, including and especially early life stress in childhood, can increase the risk of developing a substance use disorder. But not all environmental factors increase the risk. There are some that decrease risk. So for example, parental involvement in child upbringing and strong relationships, social relationships, can reduce the risk of developing a substance use disorder.